Chapter 3, Japeth's sister, Yalith. When Yalith left her grandfather's tent, she hurried toward home near the center of the oasis. At her side, she had a small pouch of darts similar to Japeth's, but instead of a miniature bow, she carried a small blowpipe. The arrows were tipped with a solution which would temporarily stun but not kill a predator, even one as large as a manticore. The manticores were strong and bad-tempered, but not intelligent or brave. She feared the manticores less than she feared some of the young men in the town, and she kept a dart in her hand in case she needed it. After leaving the grazing grounds around Lamech's tent, she walked through one of his groves that led her onto the desert of white sand lapping against brown grasses. Wherever there were not enough wells to provide for irrigation, the desert took over, but she preferred walking across the desert to the dusty, dirty paths of the oasis. Stars were bright against the velvet black of sky. At her feet, a late beetle hustled to burrow itself under the sand until morning. To her right, high in the trees of Lamech's groves, the baboons were chittering sleepily. She looked toward the horizon, and on an outcropping of rock similar to the one the earthquake had made when Sandy and Dennys met Japeth and the mammoth Higayan, she saw the shadow of a supine form. She looked to make sure it was a lion, then called softly, Ariel. The creature rose slowly, languidly, and then leapt down from the rock and loped toward her, and she saw that she had been deceived in the starlight, for it was not a lion, but one of the great desert lizards called dragons by most people, although its wings were atrophied and it could not fly. She stood frozen with anxiety on the starlit sand, her hand holding one of the tiny arrows. As the lizard neared her, it rose straight upward to a height of at least 6 feet, and suddenly arms were outstretched above the head, the tail forked into 2 legs, and a man came running toward her, a man of extraordinary beauty, with alabaster white skin and wings of brilliant purple. His long hair was black with purple glints, and his eyes were the color of amethyst. "You call me lovely one?" He bent down toward her tenderly, a questioning smile on his lips, which were deeply rosy in his white face. No, she stammered. "Not you. I thought you were Ariel." "No, I am Albus, not Ariel. And you called, and here I am." His voice soothed. "At your service. Is there anything you want?" "Oh, no, thank you, no. No baubles for your ears, your lovely little neck?" "Oh, no, thank you, no," she repeated. Her sisters would think her stupid for refusing his offer. The Nephilim were generous. This Nephil could give her everything he had offered and more. "And all of a sudden you have changed," he said. "You were a child, and now you are not a child any longer." Instinctively, she folded her hands across her breast, stammering, But I am a child. I'm not nearly 100 years old yet." He reached out one long pale hand and softly pushed her starlit hair back from her forehead. "Do not be afraid of growing up. There are many pleasures ahead for you to taste, and I would help you to enjoy them all." "You?" She looked, startled, at the glorious creature by her, light shimmering like water from the purple wings. "I, sweet little one. I, Albus, Eblis, of the Nephilim." No Nephil had paid attention to her before. She was too young. Then she saw, in her mind's eye, the strange young giant in her grandfather's tent. She was no longer a child. She did not react to the young giant as a child. There are many changes to come," Eblis said, "and you will help." Her eyes widened. "Changes? What kind of changes?" "People are living too long. El is going to cut the lifespan back." "How old is your father?" "He must be, close to 600 years, middle-aged." She looked at her fingers. 10. That was really as far as she could count accurately. "And your grandfather Lamech?" Let's see. He was very young when he had my father, not quite 200 years old. He, too, has lived for very long. His father, Methuselah, my great-grandfather, lived for 969 years, and his father was Enoch, who walked with El and lived 365 years, and then El took him. Involved in the great chronologies of her fathers, she was not prepared for him to unfurl his great wings and gather her in, enveloping her in great swirls of purple touched with brilliance as with stars. She gasped in surprise. He laughed softly. "Oh, little one, little innocent one, how much you have to learn about men's ways and about El's ways, which are not men's ways. Will you let me teach you?" To be taught by a Nephil was an honor she had never expected. She was not sure why she was hesitant. She breathed in the strange odor of his wings, smelling of stone, of the cold, dark winds which came during the few brief weeks of winter. Enveloped in Eblis's wings, she did not hear the rhythmic thud as a great lion galloped toward them across the desert, roaring as it neared them. Then both Yalith and Eblis turned and saw the lion rising to its hind legs, as the lizard had done, leaping up into the sky, a great tawny body with creamy wings, gilt-tipped, unfurling and stretching to a vast span. The great amber eyes blazed. Eblis removed his wings from around Yalith, hunched them behind his back. "Why this untoward interruption, Ariel? I ask you to leave Yalith alone. What's it to you? The daughters of men mean nothing to the seraphim." Eblis smiled down at Yalith, stroking his long fingers delicately across her burnished hair. "No," Ariel's voice was low. "No, Seraph. A Nephil may go to a daughter of man. A Nephil understands pleasure." He touched a fingertip to Yalith's lips. "I would teach you, sweeting. I think you would like what I can give you. I will leave you now to Ariel's tender ministries, but I will see you again." He turned away from them toward the desert, and his Nephil form dropped into that of a great dragon/lizard. He loped away into the shadows. Yalith said, "Ariel, I don't understand. I thought I saw you on the rock. I was sure it was you, and I called, and then it wasn't you. It was Eblis. The Nephilim are masters of mimicry. He wanted you to think it was. He wanted you to think it was I. I beg you, little one, be cautious." Her eyes were troubled. "He was very kind to me." Ariel put his hands under her chin and looked into her eyes, clear and still childlike. "Who would not be kind to you? Are you on your way somewhere?" "Home. I took Grandfather Lamech his nightlight. But oh, Ariel, there is a strange young giant in Grandfather Lamech's tent. Japeth carried him there. He has a terrible sunburn. He can't be from anywhere around here. He says he is not a giant, and I have never seen anyone like him. He is as tall as you are, and his body is not hairy. It is smooth like yours, like the Nephilim, and his skin, where it wasn't burned red, was pale. Not white, like the skin of the Nephilim, but pale and tender, like a baby's. You seem to have observed him carefully." Ariel said, "There's never been anyone like him on the oasis before." She flushed, turned slightly away. Ariel asked, "What is being done for his burn? Does he have fever?" "Yes. Higain is keeping him sprayed with cool water, and they are going to ask a seraph what to do for him." "Admiral?" "Yes. The scarab beetle." "Good. He is not one of you, this young giant, and he is not one of the Nephilim. Their skin burns white and whiter in the sun, like white ash when the fire has burned fiercely in the winter weeks. The creamy wings trembled, the golden tips shimmering in the starlight. If his skin burns, he is not of the Nephilim, nor of you. Does he have wings? No. In that, he is like a human. He seemed very young, though he is as long as you, and thin. Did you observe his eyes?" She did not notice the twinkle in his own. "Gray, nice eyes, Ariel. Steady, not burning, not giving out light like yours. More like human eyes, mine, and my parents and brothers and sisters." Ariel touched her gently on the shoulder. Go on home, child. Do not fear to cross the oasis. I will see that you are not harmed. You and Eblis, thank you. Like a child, she held her face up for a kiss, and Ariel leaned down and pressed his lips gently against hers. You will not be a child much longer. I know. He touched her lips again, lightly, and a moment later, a large lion was running lightly across the desert. Yalith turned onto a sandy path through a field of barley. At the end of the path was a stone road cutting through the white buildings of sun-baked clay, low buildings built to withstand the frequent earth tremors. Some of these low buildings contained small shops for baked goods, for stone lamps, for oil. There were shops with hanging meat, shops with bows and arrows, shops with spears of gopher wood. Some entryways were curtained with strands of bright beads, which tinkled in the evening breeze. Out of one of these came a Nephil, his arms around a young woman who was gazing up at him adoringly, leaning against him so that her rosy breast touched his pale flesh. Her glossy black hair fell down her back, past her hips, and the eyes with which she regarded him were the deep blue of lapis lazuli. Yalith stopped in her tracks. The girl was Mala, Yalith's sister, the only girl besides Yalith to be in the home tent. Their two older sisters were married and lived in another part of the oasis with their husbands. Mala had been away from the home tent a great deal lately. Now Yalith knew where she had been. Mala saw her younger sister and smiled. The Nephil smiled too, graciously acknowledging Yalith. Before they came out of the shadows, Yalith thought he was Eblis with a sense of shock and betrayal. But in the full starlight, she could see that his wings were much lighter, a delicate lavender. She could not tell what color his long hair was, but it too was lighter and seemed to have an orange glow. He had a sinuous snake-like curve to his neck and hooded eyes. He smiled again tenderly. Mala will stay with me this night. You will let your mother know. Yalith blurted out, Oh, but she will worry. We are not allowed to stay out at night. Mala left joyously. Ugiel has chosen me. I am his betrothed. Yalith gasped. But does mother know? Not yet. You tell her, little sister. But shouldn't you tell her yourself? You and Ugiel. But shouldn't you? Mala's laugh pealed again like little bells. The old ways are changing, little sister. This night I meet Ugiel's brethren. The Nephil stretched a soft wing about Mala. Yes, little sister, the old ways are changing. Go and tell your mother. Yalith turned, and they watched her go, fingers waving at her in farewell. At the end of the street, she heard footsteps and turned to see a young man following her. She reached for a dart and put it in her blowpipe, but he disappeared around the corner of a building. The low white buildings gave way to tents, each tent surrounded by Belena the dweller. At first the small plots of the shopkeepers, then groves and fields, sometimes many acres. Along the path she saw sheep, goats, camels grazing. Grapes were ripe on the vines. Her father's tent was a large one, flanked by several smaller tents. She hurried into the main tent, calling out to her mother. It was the smell that brought Dennis back to consciousness. His nostrils twitched. His stomach caved. There was a smell of cooking, smoky, rancid, a smell worse than the rotten cheese smell of silage which clung to the farmhands near home, a smell far stronger than that of the manure spread on the fields in the spring. That was a fresh-growing smell. This was old manure rotting, a smell that made the urinals and the lavatories at school seem sweet. And over it all, but not covering it, a cloying smell of perfume and sweat, body sweat which had never been near a shower. He opened his eyes. He was in an enclosed space, lit by the moonlight pouring in through a hole in what seemed to be some kind of curved roof, and by the equally brilliant light which poured from a unicorn's horn. The silver creature looked around, sniffing, pawing the dirty earthen floor. At its feet, a mammoth cringed. Dennis almost cried out, Hagayan! But Miss Mammoth was not the one who had accompanied Japeth. Miss Mammoth had matted fur on its flanks, and it was so thin that the skeleton showed through. Its eyes were dulled, and it seemed to be apologizing to the unicorn. Staring at the unicorn, still unaware of Dennis, were several small people, but just as the mammoth was unlike Hagayan, these people were unlike Japeth. They smelled. The men's bodies were hairy, giving them a simian look. Their goatskin loincloths were not clean. There were 2 full-bearded men and 2 women, naked except for the loincloths. Both the women had red hair, and the younger woman's hair was so vivid it almost seemed like flame, and some care had been taken with it. The older woman was wrinkled and discontented looking. The unicorn's light flashed against the younger woman's green eyes, making them sparkle like emeralds. You see, she cried triumphantly, I knew our mammoth could call us a unicorn. The light in the horn dimmed. The younger of the 2 men, who had matted brown hair and a red beard, unkempt and spotted with food, snarled at the girl. And now, dear sister Tegla, that we have a unicorn in the tent, what do you want of it? The girl approached the unicorn, her hand held out as though to pet it. The horn blazed with blinding brilliance, and then the tent was dark so suddenly that it took several seconds for Dennis's eyes to adjust to the moonlight coming through the hole in the roof. The man roared with laughter. Ho, Tegla, you thought you could fool us, didn't you? Even the older woman was laughing. Then she saw Dennis, who was struggling to his knees. Great Auk, what have we here? The red-headed girl gasped. A giant! The older, bow-legged man approached Dennis. He held a spear, and Dennis, gagging from the stench of the tent, felt an overriding surge of fear. The man nudged him with the spear so that he fell back onto a pile of filthy skins. The man flipped him over, using the spear, which scratched but did not cut him. He felt the tip of the spear as it was drawn lightly along his shoulder blades. Is this one yours, Tegla? The younger man asked. I thought you were seeing a Nephil. Tegla looked curiously at Dennis. He's no Nephil. The older woman stared. If he's a giant, he's a baby giant. He can't hurt us. What will we do with him? Tegla asked. The brown hairy man withdrew his spear. Throw him out. His voice held no particular malice. Dennis was just a thing to be disposed of. He felt 2 pairs of hands lifting him, and the younger man helped his father. The mammoth whimpered, and the older woman kicked at him. Certainly, Dennis thought anything would be better than this horrible-smelling place full of horrible little people. There was a brief whiff of fresh air, a glimpse of a night sky crusted with stars, a smoky redness on the horizon like the light from some enormous industrial city. Then he felt himself being thrown like offal. He felt himself rolling down a steep incline. He gagged, vomited. He had been thrown into what was evidently a garbage dump. It was even worse than wherever he had been before. He managed to pull himself up onto his knees. He was in some kind of pit. There was an overwhelming stench of feces, of rotting flesh. He did not know what else was in the pit with him, and he did not want to know. Frantically, he scrambled up the side, climbing, slipping on bones, on ooze, on decaying filth, sliding back, climbing, sliding, slipping, scrabbling, until at last he pulled himself out and up onto his feet and stood there, tottering, filthy, and terrified. There was no sign of Sandy, no sign of the unicorn, or of Japeth and Hagayan. He had no idea where he was. He looked around. He was standing on a dirt path which bordered the pit. Beside it was his rolled-up bundle of clothes. On the other side of the path were a number of tents. He had seen pictures of Bedouin tents in his social studies books at school. These were similar, though they seemed smaller and more closely clustered. It was probably from one of these tents that he had been thrown. Beyond the tents were palm trees, and he staggered toward these. He needed to shower. Did he ever need to shower? He carried with him the smell of the pit. He ran, barely keeping himself upright, to the grove of palms. Beyond these, he could see white sand, the desert. If he could only reach the desert, he could roll in the moon-washed sand and get clean. Sandy, he called, but there was no Sandy. Jay, but no small, kind young man appeared. Again, he shuddered. If he never saw any human being again, he would not go back to the tent where he had been poked out with a spear and from which he had been thrown like garbage. Racing, he was suddenly out of the grove of palms and sliding in sand. He fell down, rolled and rolled, then picked up handsful of sand and rubbed it over himself, wiping off the slime and filth of the pit. He pulled off his turtleneck and flung it away, rolled again in sand. His underclothes were filthy from the pit, and he tore them off, flinging them after the turtleneck. He did not even realize that he was scraping off his own sunburned skin, so eager was he to get clean. The sand was cool under the daisy fields of stars, and he took off his sneakers and socks, flinging them after his clothes. They would never be clean again. He rubbed more sand on his feet, his ankles, his legs, not even realizing that he was sobbing like a small child. After a while, from sheer exhaustion, he calmed down, began to assess the situation. He was badly sunburned. He had made it worse by scouring himself with sand. He was shivering, but it was not from cold, it was from fever. He sat there, naked as Adam, on the white desert, his back to the oasis. The not yet full moon was sliding down toward the horizon. Above him, there were more stars than he had ever seen before. Ahead of him was that strange reddish glow, and then he saw that it came from a mountain, the tallest in a range of mountains on the far horizon. Of course, if he and Sandy had somehow or other blown themselves onto a young planet in some galaxy or other, naturally volcanoes would still be active. How active? He hoped he wouldn't find out. At home, the hills were low, old hills, worn down by wind and rain, by the passing of the glaciers, by eons of time. Home. He began to sob again. With a great effort, he calmed himself. He and Sandy were the practical ones of the family, the ones who found solutions to problems. They could do minor repairs when the plumbing misbehaved. They could rewire an old lamp and make it work again. Their mother's reading lamp in the lab was the one they had bought at a church bazaar and made over for her. Their large vegetable garden in the summer was their pride and joy, and they sold enough of their produce to augment their allowance considerably. They could do anything. Even believe in unicorns. He thought of the unicorn he had come to think of as a virtual unicorn, and who had, somehow or other, brought him to that tent of horrible, primitive little people who had thrown him into the pit. The sad, undernourished mammoth evidently had called the unicorn, and Dennys had been called back into being too, but the unicorn had gone out into a blaze of light. A unicorn, even a virtual one, evidently could not stand the smell. All right. If he thought that a unicorn couldn't stand the ugliness of the smell, it must mean that he believed in unicorns, virtually. Of course there were no unicorns, but neither was it possible that he and Sandy, tapping into their father's parley program experiment, could have been flown to wherever in the universe they were on a backward planet of primitive life forms. Again he looked around. The stars were so clear that he seemed to hear a chiming of crystal. From the mountain came a wisp of smoke, a small tongue of fire. "Oh, virtual unicorn," he cried, "I want to believe in you, and if you don't come, I will die." He felt something cool and soft nudging his bare body, and there was the scraggly little mammoth, touching him tentatively with the pink tip of his long gray trunk, and then a burst of silver blazed in front of him and was reduced to a shimmer. A unicorn knelt before him on the sand. Dennys did not have the strength to mount the unicorn and sit astride. He gave the mammoth a look of mute gratitude, then draped himself over the unicorn's back. He closed his eyes. He was burning with fever. He would burn the unicorn. He felt that they were exploding like the volcano. Mala, Yalith's sister, betrothed to Ugiel the Nephil, lay on a small rock ledge 10 minutes walk into the desert. Her heart beat rapidly with excitement. Ugiel had brought her to the rock, covered her with kisses, and then told her to wait until he returned with his brethren to seal their betrothal. She heard the beating of wings and looked up, catching her breath. Above her, a pelican, white against the night sky, flew in circles which grew smaller as it descended. It touched the ground and raised its great wings until they seemed to brush the stars, and there was no longer a pelican in front of Mala, but a seraph, with wings and hair streaming silver in the desert wind and eyes as bright as stars. Mala scrambled to her feet, letting her long black hair swirl about her. Alarid, the seraph took her hand, looking down into her eyes. Are we really losing you? She withdrew her hands, dropping her gaze, laughing a small self-conscious laugh. Losing me? What do you mean? Is it true that you and Ugiel? Yes, it is true, she said proudly. Be happy for me, Alarid. Ugiel is still your brother, is he not? Alarid dropped to one knee so that he no longer towered over her. Yes, we are still brothers, though we have chosen very different ways. And you're sure yours is a better way? There was scorn in Mala's voice. Alarid shook his head sadly. We do not judge. The seraphim has chosen to stay close to the presence. But you're too close to be able to see it. The Nephilim have distance and objectivity. He looked at her, and her glance wavered for a moment. Yes, Ugiel told me that. Alarid rose slowly to his full height. With one silver wing, he drew her briefly to him, and she smelled starlight, but he let her go. You will not forget us? How can I forget you? She exclaimed. You have been my friend since Yalith took me out to greet the dawn, and I met you in Ariel. You have not yet greeted the dawn lately. Oh, I am learning about the night. Alarid bent down and kissed the top of her dark head. Then he walked slowly across the desert. Tears fell silently onto the sand. Mala looked down. When she raised her head, she saw a pelican flying up, to be lost among the stars. Yalith hurried into her family tent. Mala is betrothed to one of the Nephilim. No one heeded her. Her parents, brothers, and sisters-in-law were lying around on goat skins, eating and drinking wine her father had made from the early grapes. Several stone lamps lit the tent with a warm glow. Too warm, Yalith thought. Almost no breeze came through the open tent flap or the roof hole. The moon was descending, and only stars were visible. She looked around for Japeth, her favorite brother, but did not see him. Probably he was still out looking for the brother of the young giant in her grandfather's tent. Her mother was stirring something in a wooden bowl, intent on what she was doing. A mammoth, well-fed, with lustrous long hair on its flanks, lay sleeping at her feet. Someone had been sick, probably Ham, who had a weak stomach, and the smell of Ham's sickness mingled with the smell of wine, of meat from the stew pot, of the skins of the tent. Yalith was accustomed to all these odors and noticed only that Ham was lying back on a pile of skins, looking pale. Ham was, in any event, the lightest skinned in the family and the smallest, having been, according to Matred, born a full moon early. Anna, his red-haired wife, knelt by him, offering him wine. Languidly, he pushed it away, then pulled Anna down to him, kissing her full sensual mouth. Yalith went up to Matred, her mother, repeated, Mala is betrothed. Matred looked up briefly. She is not old enough. Oh, mother, of course she is. And she is. Old enough? Matred was preoccupied with what she was doing. Betrothed. Who is it this time? It's not one of us. It's one of the Nephilim. Matred shivered, but went on stirring, without focus. Mala has changed. She is no longer my merry little girl who was satisfied to see a butterfly or a drop of dew on a spider's web. She is no longer satisfied to be with us in the home tent. A tear dropped into the bowl. Yalith patted her mother's arm. She's grown up, mother. So have you. But you don't go chasing about the oasis at night. You don't run after Nephilim. Maybe the Nephilim ran after her? She's pretty enough, but it is not right for me to hear something like this at second hand. That is not how things are done. That is not how my daughter behaves. I'm sorry, Yalith said uncomfortably. I was walking home from Grandfather Lamech's, and I saw them, Mala and a Nephil. His name is Ugiel. He asked me to tell you so that you would not be worried. Worry? Matred exclaimed. Just don't tell your father, that's all. What's to prevent this Ugiel, this Nephil, from coming himself with Mala to tell me and your father according to the custom? Yalith frowned worriedly. He said that times are changing. Eblis had said that too. She felt a jolt of insecurity in the pit of her stomach. She did not tell her mother about Eblis. Matred put down her wooden spoon with a bang. There are many who think it is an honor to be noticed by a Nephil and accept their ways. Anna, Matred looked across at her son Ham's wife, red-headed, still luscious, but beginning to be overblown. Anna tells me that her younger sister, Tegla, is being singled out by a Nephil for marriage. Anna is thrilled, but you're not. Tegla is not my daughter. Mala is. Matred turned away. Child, I am not star-dazzled by the Nephilim. They are very different from us. They are beautiful, yes, but they will make changes, and not all changes are good. I don't want things to change, Yalith thought, and then, in her mind's eye, she saw again the young giant who had bowed to her in Grandfather Lamech's tent, and who was unlike anybody she had ever seen. Matred continued, changes, I suppose, inevitable, and sometimes it brings good things. She looked across the tent to her oldest son, Shem, who was sitting with his wife, Elisheba, eating some of the grapes from the vineyard, which were not pressed for wine, but kept for the table. Shem was pulling one grape at a time from the bunch and throwing it to Elisheba. She would catch each grape in her own mouth, and they would both laugh with pleasure at the simple, sensual game. It seemed amazingly young and romantic for the stocky, solid couple. Elisheba is a great help to me. And then Japeth's wife. Yalith looked to where a young woman with softly curling black hair against creamy skin was scouring a wooden bowl with sand. The young woman looked up and waved in greeting. Matred said, she comes to us from another oasis and with a strange name. Oh, holy Bama. Yalith sounded it out. Look at her, Matred commanded. Yalith looked again at her sister-in-law. Oholibama was fairer of complexion than Yalith or the other women, even fairer than Ham. Her hair and brows were blacker than the night sky, a rippling purply black. When Oholibama stood, she was nearly a head taller than the other women, and beautiful. She always seemed lit by moonlight, Yalith thought. What about her? She asked her mother. Look at her, child, look at her. Yalith was shocked. You mean you think she... Matred shrugged slightly. She is the youngest daughter of a very old man. She held up the fingers of both hands. More than 10 years younger than her brothers and sisters. I love Oholibama as though she were my own. And if Oholibama was indeed sired by a Nephil, then great good has been brought into our lives. Yalith looked at Oholibama as though seeing her for the first time. After Yalith and Mala, Oholibama was the youngest woman in the tent, younger by several years than Elisheba, Shem's wife, or Anna, Ham's wife. All three of Yalith's brothers had married at unusually young ages, and all three had grumbled at having to take on domestic duty so soon. Shem had protested, but we are too young to marry. I'm the oldest, and I've barely reached my first 100 years. His father had replied, there's a certain urgency, my son. Why? And how will you find wives for us when you are so young? You're a fine-looking man, the patriarch assured him. Ham had joined in. But why the rush, father? What is this urgency you speak of? The patriarch pulled out his long beard, which was beginning to show white. Yesterday, when I was working in the vineyard, the voice spoke to me. El told me that I must find wives for you. But why? Ham protested. We're young and we need time. There are changes, great changes coming, the patriarch said. Is the volcano going to erupt? Shem asked. If the volcano erupts, Ham said, wives won't do us any good. Their father told them only that the word of El had come to him in the vineyard and that El had given no explanation. Elisheba and Anna were easily found for Shem and Ham. The patriarch had a reputation as an honest man. He had the largest and best vineyards on the oasis and fine flocks of goats and sheep. The fame of his wine had spread to many other oases round about. Matri was a woman of unquestionable virtue and beauty, and her girth attested to her skills as a cook. It was a privilege to marry into her tent. Japeth was young enough so that no one stepped forward. His face was still smooth and beardless. His body hair was no more than soft down. His eyes were friendly and guileless, but he was on the threshold of manlyhood. His father went off on his camel one day and came back with a holibama. Japeth had been at the well getting water for the animals when he saw a young girl on a white camel, a young girl of fair complexion with dark hair tumbling richly against her ivory shoulders. His eyes met a holibama's eyes, dark as the night sky between stars, and his knees became fluid. She slid off the white camel's back and came toward him, slender hands outstretched. Their love was a bright flower, youthful and radiantly beautiful. Holibama, oh Holibama, a name as strange as her moonlit beauty, but soon it flowed easily from their lips. Holibama was Yalith's first real friend. They were not far apart in age, both of them barely out of childhood and into womanhood. They were alike, too, in their unlikeness to the others. They saw and rejoiced in what most people of the oasis never noticed. Both liked to leave the tent at first dawn to watch and wait for the sun to rise over the desert, delighting in the calling of the stars just before daylight. It was during one of her dawn walks that Yalith had met the great lion, who was the seraph Ariel, and on another walk, when she had persuaded Mala to join her, that she had introduced Ariel and Alara the pelican to her sister. But once the holibama came, Mala preferred to sleep in the morning. So Yalith and her youngest sister-in-law would slip out quietly. When the great red disk of day pulled above the white sand and the stars dimmed and their songs faded out, scarab beetles who had slept under the sand during the hours of the dark came scuttling up into the light. At the edge of the oasis, the baboons leapt from the trees, clapping their hands and shrieking for joy at the rising of the sun. Behind them on the oasis, the cocks crowed, and in the desert the lions roared their early morning roar before retreating to their caves to sleep during the heat of the day. Yalith and Holibama shared a silent and joyful companionship. Now, in the warm and noisy tents, Holibama beckoned to Yalith. Have you eaten? No. Yalith shook her head. I meant to eat with grandfather, but I forgot all about food because there was a strange young... Ham interrupted her, calling out from the pile of skins on which she was reclining. I have a headache, Oholi. I need you. Holibama said sharply, let Anna rub your head. She's your wife. Her fingers do not have the touch that yours do. And, indeed, Holibama had a reputation for having healing in her fingers. She was still sharp. If you don't want a headache, don't eat and drink too much. She turned away and went to the cook pot, ladled some stew in a wooden bowl, and handed it to Yalith. The mammoth left matron and came and nudged Yalith's knee. No, Sela, Yalith scolded. You know I won't give you anything more to eat. You're getting fat. She deftly picked pieces of meat and vegetable from the bowl and ate them, then raised it to her lips to drink the broth. It tasted wonderful, and she realized that she was very hungry. Beside her, Holibama sighed. What's the matter? Yalith asked. The mammoth moved to the older girl who scratched its gray head. I was walking through the town this morning. We needed some provisions. One of the Nephilim came out of one of the bathhouses, smelling of oil and spices, and stood in my path. She paused. And, Yalith prodded, he said that I was one of them, one of their daughters. Yalith glanced at her mother, then back at Oholabama, thought of Eblis and his glorious purple wings. Would that be so terrible? It is absurd. I love my parents. I love my father. Yalith had never seen Oholabama's parents. And how would she herself feel if someone suggested that her father was not, in fact, her father? But now that Matron had put the thought in her mind, it was easy to believe that Oholabama had been sired by a Nephil. She had gifts of healing. Ham was right about that. Her voice when she sang was beautiful as a bird's. She saw things no one else saw. But then, Yalith reminded herself, she too was different, the seventh child of her parents, and she knew quite well who her parents were, and that they had been disappointed when they had a fourth daughter instead of a fourth son. Did you hear me saying that Mala is betrothed to a Nephil? She asked Oholabama. Yes, I heard. Mala likes pretty things. The wives of the Nephilim live in houses of stone and clay, not in tents. I'm sure Mala feels proud to have been chosen. What do you think about it? Yalith asked. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I think about the Nephilim, especially if, she broke off. And the Seraphim? Yalith asked. I'm not sure what I think about them either. Oholabama pressed her fingers against her ears as Ham started to shout. For a small man, he had a powerful voice. Sela, come here. If Oholabama won't help me, but I need a unicorn. Anas said crossly, you know a unicorn can't come near you. It doesn't have to come near, Ham grunted, but can cast her light from any distance. It's only the light I need. Anna muttered, you need more than that. Yalith, you can call a unicorn. Or Sela, call me a unicorn. A sudden flash of light made them all blink. It was all through lightning. It was as though lightning had somehow managed to get inside the heavy hides of the tent, perhaps flashing down through the roof hole. Get away! Ham cried. Who are you? He was now referring to the unicorn, which stood glimmering in the tent. On the skins right by Ham lay a very young man with raw sunburned skin and eyes glazed with fever. Matron peered down at the boy. How did he get here? Ham, is he a friend of yours? Ham looked totally bewildered. I'd never seen him before. What is he? Shem demanded. The patriarch, who had been chewing on a mutton bone, looked at the boy. Another kind of giant, he said disgustedly. Oholabama said, whoever he is, give him air. Don't crowd around. Look, he has sun fever. Oh my, he looks terrible. Elisheba, Shem's wife, peered at the boy. If he's a giant, he's a very young one. Yalith managed to push between Matron and Oholabama so that she could see. She shrieked, it's my young giant! What's that, daughter? Matron asked. You've seen him before? In grandfather's tent, when I took him his nightlight. The patriarch scowled. If my father, Lamech, doesn't want a giant in his tent, why should I have him in mine? Oh, please, father, Yalith begged. You've really seen him before? Oholabama asked. When I brought grandfather Lamech his nightlight, Yalith repeated, there was this young sunburned giant in his tent. She looked at the fevered young man. I'm not sure this is. Where's Japeth? The tent flap was pushed aside, and Japeth came in. Why, here I am, looking for a unicorn, and Sela raised her trunk and trumpeted. Why, Japeth exclaimed. I've been looking all over the oasis, and there's one right here, and so is the den, the one I've been looking for. He dropped to his knees. Great auk, is he alive? Oholabama ordered, move back, all of you. She put her hand against Dennis's bare chest. He's alive, but he's burning with fever. Anna moved back slightly, pushing her red hair away from her face with a dirty hand. Is he a seraph or a Nephil? Yalith shook her head. He doesn't have wings. Oh, Japeth, I'm glad you're back. He the other one, isn't he? The one you were looking for? Yes, Japeth said, but he looks burned nearly to death. Oholabama pressed her hand against the reddened forehead, wincing at the heat of it, turning to look for the unicorn, who had almost dimmed out of being. Unicorn, can you help? The unicorn's outline sharpened, and it bent toward the flesh boy, and light flowed from its forehead, cooling the burning skin. Ham pushed up from his pouch and blundered toward the unicorn. Me, I need help. I feel sick. Help me. His fair hair was streaming with sweat, but even lighter hair on his chest held drops of moisture. Again there was a flash of light, and when they could see again, the unicorn had disappeared. Idiots! Honest green eyes sparkled. You know you can't get near a unicorn. Meanwhile, the patriarch said, how are we going to get rid of this half-baked giant? My dear, Matron protested, surely we should show him some hospitality. My good father Lamech evidently threw him out of his tent, her husband retorted. No, father, Yalith protested. You don't understand. There are two giants, and grandfather has the other one in his tent and is taking care of him. I don't know what you're talking about, her father said. Flo, can there be two of these peculiar giants? Oh, father, if only you go to see grandfather Lamech. I will have nothing to do with calling the old man or his strange giants. We have enough troubles without sick giants being added to them. Yalith knelt beside Oholabama and looked at the boy, who lay breathing shallowly, eyelids twitching slightly. Yalith reached out a tentative finger and touched the boy's fleshed cheek. You're not Sand? You're his brother? The reddened eyelids opened slightly. Dennys. Then the boy flung his arm over his face, and though to ward off a blow, his lips began to shake convulsively. What's happened? Japeth demanded. Somebody's hurt him, and he doesn't recognize me. He's afraid. Elisheba's voice was shocked. Shem protested. Surely grandfather Lamech couldn't have hit him. Never, Japeth defended swiftly. Not grandfather, Yalith spoke at the same time. His skin is rubbed raw, Oholabama exclaimed. Someone between grandfather Lamech's tent and here has hurt him. Matron bent close, asking softly, who could have done this, even to a deformed giant? Japeth asked. Dennys, the boy moaned. Where have you been? Did someone call you and the unicorn back into being? Who was it? Oholabama touched her husband's hand. Stila called the unicorn, and suddenly this wounded giant was here. But he's been somewhere else in the oasis. Japeth took his wife's hand and pressed it against his cheek. And he has been abused. He's barely conscious. This is terrible. Anna peered over Yellow's shoulder. Are you sure he's human? Japeth frowned. They said they are twins, but I think twins is human. The patriarch murmured, well, with the winged creature around, sleeping with the daughters of men, it is hard to know any more who is human and who is not. He looked at Oholabama, but not unkindly. Oholabama touched Dennys' forehead again, and he opened his eyes and flinched. Shh, I will not hurt you. She looked at Yalith and Japeth. The unicorn's horn has taken away some of his fever, but he is still very hot. Was it this bad when you saw him, Japeth? Japeth shook his head. He was sunsick, worse than the sand, but not like this. The patriarch asked, you say there are two of these giants? Two, exactly alike. I left the one called Sandy in grandfather Lamech's tent. He looked rather defensively at his father to go look for this one. And then, to my surprise, when I given up for the night, he was here, right in our own home tent. Ham suggested, We've never seen two lookalikes. We should send someone to grandfather Lamech's tent to make sure there's another one. You doubt me? Japeth demanded. Just want to make sure, Ham said. Less hotly, Japeth said, I found it difficult to believe at first myself. Cutting across their conversation, Oholabama said, we should bathe him with water to try to keep him cool and moist. Water, Matron exclaimed. Even the mammoths are having difficulty sensing for water, but there is plenty of wine. Not my wine, the patriarch roared. Woman, you have no idea how hard I work in the vineyard. I do, Japeth commented mildly. I work with you. Oholabama frowned slightly. I don't think wine will do, Japeth said. He gained spread water from Grandfather Lamech's water pot in the sand, and I think it helped. He looked towards Selah, who again was at Matron's feet. Anna glanced out of the corner of her green eyes at pasty ham, but at Dennys's recumbent form. If his skin didn't look like raw meat, he'd be quite gorgeous. Elisheba, Shem's wife, stocky and sensible looking, with thickly curling black hair and dark placid eyes, snorted. Keep away from him, Anna. You saw that the unicorn went right to him. For all his giant size, he's barely more than a baby, and he's trembling. He's frightened. Matron said fiercely, Whatever, he shall not be ill-treated again. Yalith looked gratefully at her mother. Her father snorted. Women, I'm always being bullied by women and their good works. Matron feeds any lazy beggar who comes to the tent, and Elisheba helps her keep a soup pot full. People do not choose to be poor and hungry, Matron said calmly. We have enough and to spare. Husband, I will not have this young giant abused. Do what you want with him, the patriarch said. It makes no difference to me as long as I'm not bothered about it. Oholabama looked at her husband. We shouldn't leave him here. It's too hot and crowded. He was near death when the unicorn's light touched him, and I think he's still very ill. Listen to Oholi, Ham said. She knows what she's talking about. For Yalith, no matter what Japeth had said, Dennys was the same young man she had seen in her grandfather's tent. She had been afraid of him when she had first seen him, and now this time it was the young giant who seemed terrified. Where can we take him? He's just a child, Oholabama suggested. What about the women's tent? In Yalith's eyes, Sandy/Dennys was not a child. Elisheba asked, How near to the time of the moon is it for any of us? Matron, who had the one to keep track of such things, drew her brows together in thought and touched her fingers, counting. Not for a while. Soon he will be well enough to sleep here in the big tent, or he will be dead. Yalith shuddered. Don't say that. He is our guest. We don't let our guests die. My dear, Matron said, he is badly burned. His skin is raw, and though someone has been scraping him like a carrot. Perhaps we should call on one of the seraphim, Japeth suggested. His mother nodded, looked at Yalith. Your friend Ariel would come, would he not? I think so, yes. If she had to call Ariel, Yalith would make very certain that it was Ariel, not Eblis, though she was not sure why she felt that making sick calls was not part of the business of the Nephilim. Elisheba, Matron continued, if you look into the chest by my sleeping skins, you'll find some soft linen for him to lie on. The animal skins are too rough. Anna simpered. Mother always knows best, Ham, and moved away. I will crush some figs and make juice for him to drink. Matron always felt better when there was something to do. Oholabama pressed her palm against Dennys's forehead again. He is so hot. She frowned as he finished to moan, eyes tightly closed. The patriarch said, if he's going to die on us, get him out of the tent quickly. Yalith protested, Father! Japeth reached comfortingly for her hand. The patriarch said, you'll have to learn, daughter, that you cannot nurse every broken-winged bird or wounded salamander back to health. I can try. Perhaps you can make them suffer more that way, her father suggested. But if you let them die? Oh, Father! Now, Matron bustled back. Enough talk. Japeth will help us carry our strange little giant to the women's tent. Quick now.